It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant Prime.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, YouTube, as well as the mobile app. He's Jonathan Casillas. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Multiple ways for you to interact with us here on the program. 201-939-4513 is the telephone number. You can also use hashtag Giants Chat on social media. He is at jcasillas52. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants, and we are broadcasting from the Giants Podcast Studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. So the Giants coming off the bye, 4 games remaining in the regular season. We'll get into what lies ahead for the Giants during this final stretch, some things to look for, especially with a few opportunities coming up. And JC, that's where I want to start, because you look at the upcoming schedule. You've got a Commanders team that is going to be entering this weekend having dropped 8 in a row, and probably a good chance that Jaden Daniels won't play after re-aggravating the elbow injury, and the Giants will likely see Marcus Mariota. Not that he is not a seasoned vet and hasn't done a good job filling in for Daniels. They're going to get a Raiders team that clearly has struggled immensely, a Vikings team in which J.J. McCarthy has had his ups and downs, has been hurt, in and out of the lineup, and then a Cowboys team that may or may not have something to play for in the final game of the season. So at least in terms of the caliber of the competition, before the Cowboys game, considering Dallas is the only team mathematically that still could potentially have something to play for, this is a chance for the Giants to show something here, to see whether or not they can finish, to see a little bit better of a balanced attack. And I'm not saying it's going to mean the end-all, be-all in terms of what lies ahead for next season, but I think there is a number of winnable games for Big Blue here down the stretch.
Yeah, I believe so, Lance. The first half of the season, let's say the first quarter, first 5 or 6 games of the year, I use the word respond, and I think the Giants responded a lot, especially early in the season. How are they going to respond to, I think, the worst loss that they had in 2025 this last week against the Patriots? They were fully dismantled, right? Offense, defense, and special teams.
Sure.
They were out-physicaled, and not just by the statistics and the run game and stuff like that. You saw it. You heard it.
Yeah.
Sure. And the Giants have to respond. And I said this earlier. I was doing the hangout earlier with the crew, and I said this is the time of the year, especially in a season like this where, you're 2-11 and you're not playing for anything, but this is where you come late bye, right? The late byes are not great. Late bye, so you have a lot of stuff to look at and a lot of self-reflection. This is where you look at a mirror and say, hey, am I doing everything I can, not just for this organization, but am I doing enough for me to stay in the league? There's already been multiple firings in this organization. Head coach, defensive coordinator, right, Coach Cox. Like, this is where you should look at yourself. Hey, am I doing everything I can to not just play the best football for the Giants, but for myself? And if you do that during this time off that the Giants had, and you come back with a refreshed energy, forget your record. Don't worry about none of that stuff. Don't worry about the playoffs. Don't worry about bonuses and all of that. Just go out there and play good quality football. Put good film out there, not just for the Giants, but for yourself. I hope that the guys did that during the bye week so we can get a little bit better play, because this Giants team still got athletes. Yes, some guys are banged up here and there, but this Giants team got athletes. This Giants team, I think, has a better roster than it has the last few years, and it just hasn't showed it, right? Abdul Carter, he's a guy that we've been talking about for discipline reasons why. And then when you look at the play, it's like, I probably could understand it. Now that we understand the discipline, this team needs to be more disciplined. From the start of the game, the start of the season, second game of the year, Dallas, right, where they had 21 call penalties. I think it was like 14 that they actually, got
a lot combined between both teams.
It was insane. And this team needs to show that they're making progress. I know it's late in the year. I know they're not playing for anything, but we have to see something right now, Lance. Like, last week was horrible. That was every game I felt, it was maybe a couple games, San Fran and the second Eagles game, where I felt like the Giants got outplayed and it wasn't really a close game. That game, they got their butts whooped.
Oh, sure.
And I didn't feel like that this whole year. And then I saw that. I'm like, okay, this is where you got to, like, look at yourself as an organization, as a team, and then individually as players, as coaches, because that's embarrassing, you know. And these are all prideful men, you know, from the bottom all the way up to the top. And they have to respond. They have to figure out a way to respond. They had a bye week, got a chance to go ahead and self-scout coaches as well, see what you have, you know, done well this year, because they have put out some good film. Defensively, I would like to see them to take a big step forward. I think that's been a huge disappointment, and let's see what they can do against a reeling Commanders team, right? They're without their Ertz. You know, he's been hurting the Giants for a very long time, not just with this team. And then they might be at their second quarterback. So I do see that, you know, there's some things that the Giants could take advantage of come Sunday.
Yeah, they're not putting up a boatload of points, mainly because of the injuries. Terry McLaurin recently came back, but he had missed a stretch. I mean, if you look at this 8-game skid, to your point, JC, they put up 13 points against the Dolphins. Okay, went up slightly against the Broncos. That was a close game that they lost right at the end, but they were shut out by a Minnesota Vikings team that actually the Giants are going to see. But, I mean, Minnesota has been Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I would say their defense probably played lights out for the first time we've seen this entire season. So, very erratic squad that the Giants are going up against.
And they figured out ways to lose games, too, just like
Without
the Giants.
a doubt.
Yep.
Absolutely. And
8 run.
I would wholeheartedly agree with your assessment that the Patriots game was the first time that the Giants were essentially non-competitive, right? Every game, no matter how it finished, you felt that they had a chance. They were in the thick of things. They were completely, as you mentioned,
I mean, it was
outplayed.
30 at halftime.
Yeah.
They had 30 points at halftime, and they basically pulled the foot off the pedal.
Well, you had special team issues across the board. You gave up short fields to the Patriots. You gave up a special teams touchdown. So no matter how you want to spin it,
and they
took advantage.
Keep up with their physicality. That's what really jumped off the screen to me watching the game from home. I'm like, this team is they're like, yeah, we're going to send a message to not just this team that we have a lot of history with, right? Preseason, Super Bowls, but we want to send a message to the conference, to the league, that we are the best team in the league. That's how they played. They played like that, you know, and everybody talk about the Giants, you know, catch up in talent-wise to other teams. Sometimes it's not about talent. It's about mentality. It's about mentality and approach that you take, and the approach that the Patriots take. I mean, when you think about the Giants from back in the day, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, it's kind of taking that same type of approach, and that's what's kind of been missing here in New York. Is that approach, that physical mentality is like, no matter what the score is, you're going to know that we was in a fight today, you know?
And we're going to have the bruises to prove it to you. Well, it's that old school flavor that you're talking about in terms of comparison to the 80s Giants. And I think there's a brand of football, which is what you were getting at, that New England plays, that differentiates themselves, JC, and you know that very well from being within the organization, that is cut from a different cloth. And I think it feeds off of Vrabel and him being a former player and how he played and how he approached the game. Because I'll give you an example, and this goes back to a conversation I was having on BBKL last week relating to the hits that Dart took. You know, and that fine line about, do you step out 2 yards earlier to avoid the hit? Last night, I don't know how much you saw maybe of the Eagles-Chargers, but there were times where Herbert was running out of play. And I know Herbert's playing with the broken left hand, but Philly let him run out of play. And that was what I was pointing out. I'm not saying that guys, and you know this from being a former defensive player, that they don't have the mentality, hey, if a quarterback's running, I'm going to try to take a hit. But there's a brand and effort that New England shows that I don't think is duplicated, which was my point, JC, from the 31 other teams, meaning they stick out a lot more than even a Philadelphia team with Vic Fangio at the controls, which you know is physically defensive minded, but there's some other teams that they'll let the quarterback run out of play because they don't want to risk a penalty, whereas New England's going to walk that fine line.
Yeah, and they did. Yeah,
without a doubt.
That wasn't the only hit. It wasn't the only hit from that linebacker as well, right?
Ellis,
And look, I think that's a little self-inflicted with Dart, you know?
No doubt, but
I'm
I
not
do
talking
think
about
the
that
approach
play.
of the team is different.
Yes,
what
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I think, and I want to talk about that a little bit, because I do think that Dart he's not taking advantage of what they accredit to quarterbacks. They have a lot of, protections for the quarterback, and he's not using it. And the reason why I say that, because yes, he becomes a runner when he breaks the line of scrimmage and he's running the football, design runs, blah, 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 all that stuff. But once you show that your willingness to run out of bounds, your willingness to just, go away from contact, your willingness to slide early on, now it puts you at the ultimate advantage, because defenders, they do not want to get penalized. And if you've shown that time after time you're making the smart play, which is not taking on unnecessary hits, because sometimes you 3rd and 1, crucial point of the game, right?
Yeah, you need to fight for the first down under those circumstances. You have no choice.
And if you look at Mahomes has been running guys over. You know why? Because he showed the willingness to run out of bounds so many times, and everybody eases up as they get to him, because they don't want to hit him when he slides, because you could get ejected if you hit him the wrong way. You can, definitely going to get penalized. You're going to get fined. Yep. There's so many different things. Dart has never gave people that. He didn't give that, if I hit him, I'm going to come out. No, there's he's going to allow me to hit him because he thinks he's tough. And he is tough. He is a tough guy, but there is rules to help you play the quarterback position. And I just feel like he didn't take advantage of them early enough. And that's why you saw the hit right on the fine edge, because he knew he can get there, because he knew that Jackson Dart wasn't stepping out. So I just feel like, and I just want to talk about that because I really haven't spoken about that.
Sure, no, I'm glad you did.
We haven't spoken in, I don't know how long, a year?
Correct. It's been a while since we've done a show, correct. Yeah,
but
so this is refreshing.
I wanted to put out my perspective on that, because he can get that back. Because now if he goes to slide late, if he goes to go out of bounds a little late, and he does get out of bounds, they're going to take that extra step and hit him. So hopefully he doesn't take a shot like that again, but he can cause penalties now, because he showed them the ladder. He showed them things that you're not really supposed to see from a quarterback. You want a quarterback to protect yourself, but he showed that he doesn't do that all the time. So he might be able to create a penalty off of that now, because he kind of put that out there, right? I love his mentality, though. I do love his mentality.
The toughness, yeah.
I love it, and I think people feed off of it, just like when Scottaboo was healthy for the Giants. The Giants need more guys like that, right? Live on the edge, play on the edge, but the last sentence of that statement is never hurt this team. I love the way he plays on the edge. I love the way he lives on the edge, but don't hurt the team. Don't hurt the team by getting yourself hit like that. And I want everybody to play like that. Play feisty. That's what the Patriots did. The Patriots played right on the edge. There was some penalties there,
sure,
but they brought it every play. That's the way football should be played, I believe. And the Giants have to take a similar approach to that. In this division, with the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Commanders, they all have their quarterbacks in place. They all have special talent at the wide receiver position. They all have guys on defense. They all have coaches in position. The Giants got to catch up, not just when we talk about in the locker room, but as a whole culture and organization. That's where I think the Giants got to make the next jump. And it takes Jackson Dart, Dexter Lawrence, all of the young leaders, the older leaders, to go ahead and establish what is Giants Nation? What is Giants style? What is it? And that hasn't been established.
Interestingly, and I'm glad we delved into a little bit more on this Dart perspective, because I don't know if you heard his comments, JC, after the game, but he was defending that, he's been playing like this since high school and college, and that this is his brand. So he's rolling it over. But I was curious your perspective, because as somebody that also played on the high school and the college level, there's a distinct difference between the competition you're seeing there and maybe what guys let you get away with versus going up against Ellis and the Patriots on the NFL level. So I think there's still that room for him to make an adjustment. But I think you brought up a good point. He's still in that middle ground where there's times that, for example, the Landry play, he did give himself up, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Landry, I thought jumped over him.
Slid
he has
times.
slid, yeah. But then there's the other play where you're roaming up the sideline and you think, okay, I got some wiggle room here. And all of a sudden, Ellis, to your point, saying, no, if he's not going to go over out of play, I'm going to hustle over, I'm going to get a hit on him. So it's sort of picking and choosing and knowing, to your point, down in distance where you are in the game so that you don't put yourself in a position where you're now not available.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's going to have to learn, because you brought up the division. Well, Jaden Daniels just re-injured the elbow injury.
Yeah.
So his status is very much up in the air. not to get off topic, but a guy that we're very familiar with, and it was a shame to see it happen. Daniel Jones just tore his Achilles, and here's another season, right?
Yeah.
Now, he was playing with a broken fibula, and I'm sure there may be some connection.
Another tough guy.
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
we all love Daniel and his
Nobody's
toughness.
questioning his
for sure.
toughness, but at the end of the day, you don't get brownie points for being a tough guy. You get brownie points for being available in the game.
That's it.
And the narrative, and it's really not a narrative, there's validity behind it. DJ, outside of one full season where they made the playoffs, the Giants, he has missed games.
Lot,
Dart doesn't want to go down that road where toughness is great, physicality is great, making game-changing plays, but every year there's 3 to 4 games that he may not be available. And that's, I think, the concern here, which goes under the umbrella of what we're talking about, things to watch in the final 4 games. How does he look to extend plays, and what is his perspective and approach to that?
You get, when you're in the league, especially a younger guy, you get baptized, right? That was his baptism.
By fire very quickly.
Yes. That was his baptism. It happened a little later in this season. And I think he has learned. I think he's learned from the hits away from the sideline, right? Against the Chicago Bears, right? Yeah. He has slid, even in the game last week, he slid multiple times. And he will learn. My thing is with him, it's all right. Let's say he was throwing interceptions, right? And he has the same, like, I've been playing this way in college and in high school, but because you're throwing interceptions in the league, you probably got to figure out what you have to change to not throw interceptions. You know what I'm saying? So his numbers look great, right? He got 11 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 7 or 8 rushing touchdowns, that's really good. Yeah. So you don't really see the hits on paper, So it's not really
because the numbers look good, to your point.
Because the numbers look good, but that's a part of the game as well, taking the hits. So it's like, okay, you might have took some of those hits, and they weren't as hard as Ellis last week. I've never seen him I haven't seen too many people get hit like that.
Well, he flew.
At the quarterback position.
Dart took flight, okay?
Right?
And he's not Superman, I'll tell you that.
So what I do know in the NFL, people talk about the tackling in the NFL, and that might be true. It might not be as great as it used to be, right? But everybody can hit, Lance. Everybody. They've been running and hitting since they were children. and they would love
the basic concept
to
of
hit
football,
a quarterback like that. So my thing, it was just a little immature for him to say that, because I heard the press conference after the game, and I was like, bro, if I kept on playing the same way I played, I had an early neck injury in my career. I would never played 9 years. I had to change the way I played because of my health. And he was in the tent, 4 or 5 times this year already before he actually got the concussion. So it's like, bro, you have to learn from not just the X's and O's and the speed of the game and all that, but also from the physicality of the game. It's an increase. The skill level, the intelligence level, and also the physicality, and you have to put that in as a factor at things that you have to improve on when you move to the next level. And we're not asking you to be a punk. We're not asking you to do none of that. Just be smarter, as you're doing in the X's and O's, as you're doing in route progression, as you're doing as the situational football. You're being smart in all of those things. You should be smart in the physicality of the game as well.
It reminds me, and I'm going to go back into the archives, there was a preseason game several years back between the Jets and the Giants. And Rex Ryan was the head coach of the Jets. He kept Mark Sanchez in the game, if you recall this, behind like 3rd and 4th string offensive linemen. Ooh. And you had Giants players trying to fight for roster spots, right? So if you're fighting for it, right, you're going to bring it, right? Yeah. You're treating this like it's the Super Bowl. Mark got hurt. Geno Smith then became the starter. The reason I'm bringing that up is Dart, interestingly, we talked about, okay, next 3 opponents mathematically pretty much out of it. But to your point, guys are fighting to stay in the league.
Forever.
Okay?
Like they're trying to extend their careers. Yeah.
So it's not just, these guys are not just going through the motions, right? Not. Guys are going out and they're wanting to maybe take your head off, especially if you're out in the open field. So I actually would argue, I don't want to say that it's anywhere near the litmus test of the Patriots, but maybe a little bit more interesting and dangerous who you're going up against the next 3 weeks, because these teams are playing guys that also they're evaluating. Yeah. And if you know you're being put under the microscope and you don't have a guarantee to be on the roster next year, or you got to put film out for everybody else, there's a little bit more pep in your step, right? No matter who you're going up against.
You're playing for your career.
Without a doubt.
this point.
So that's maybe more of a reason why he needs to be a little bit more cautious in his approach, because a lot of people would look at, these teams, they've got nothing to play for. No, but the individuals have everything at stake in these next 3 games. And that's where I think we're going to learn a lot about Dart. We're going to also learn about a lot of the individuals on this team, because even though the Giants are a relatively young team, a lot of these guys have their careers ahead of them.
Yeah.
So there is something to be said about if you're going to be able to have the luxury to play around Dart for the next few seasons. And what I mean is some of these offensive linemen that are at least under contract, Wan'Dale Robinson I know is due for a contract, but there is something to be said about, all right, this group you would hope is going to stay together moving forward. Yeah, at least from a chemistry standpoint. I'm not saying that the offense is going to be the same or the schematics, but the rapport you build in these next 4 games maybe means a little bit of something in terms of what you could carry over to the offseason as well as next training camp, because at the end of the day, Dart still has a tiny sample size, JC, of him being on the field and working with a lot of this personnel. So, maybe that could help. Not huge, but bits and pieces, at least in terms of what we're going to see in the final 4 games. And, guys making a statement to maybe give the front office a reason to evaluate how they play and whether or not they can fit into the puzzle here moving forward, because I still think there's plenty of roster spots up for grabs, especially based on the 2-11 mark.
Yeah, everything's being analyzed right now.
Yeah.
When you have moves like that, the firing of Dayball, firing of Shane Bowen, like this is what that means. Like everything is being evaluated. Shane, all the way down kicker, like everybody's being evaluated. Dexter Lawrence. I know people don't think that he may go anywhere, but Dexter Lawrence is being evaluated. Like they want to see if these people on this roster and these coaches on this staff are going to be in the New York Giants in the next years to come. There's a lot of contracts out there, and I do think, look, there are some vital pieces that the Giants need to keep, of course, but then there might be pieces that have been here for a while that may need to go elsewhere, not just for the Giants, but for them, and for their careers, because maybe they've just got everything they could here at New York, and it's tough. I played for 4 different teams. I ended here with the New York Giants, and I cherished every stop that, I made. And, for me to end my career here, this is one of the greatest organizations. So the last time I was in the locker room, I spoke to Amir Smith-Marset. And I told him, I was like, because he hasn't really been active and not been playing. And I'm like, bro, just come here with a grateful attitude every single day, bro, because you never know the next job, who's going to be working there, what coach is going to be there. So put your best step foot forward, not just on Sundays because you're not playing, every single day, because you should be grateful that you're in the NFL. You should be grateful that you get to do what you love for work. You may not be happy where you're at right now, but don't show that when you walk into the building. Show the happy attitude, because you don't know where these coaches are going. And now this is before any firings happen or anything like that. I played with Spags in 2012, right, in New Orleans. We were the worst defense in the league. I got benched for Jonathan Vilma. He was suspended, and I got hurt, and then I never played on defense ever again. So that year, Spags apologized to me after the year, and I was like, yeah, like whatever. But I played hard every day. I came to work with a smile on my face. I never changed my demeanor, right? Fast forward 4 years later, he brings me here to New York, and I'm sitting there like, oh, the Giants are offering me a nice contract. I'm like, where did they come from? And he was like, oh, Spags is there. Oh,
the connection.
But because I played the game a certain way, even when I was unhappy, I was very upset that I didn't play defense.
Yeah.
But I didn't show it, and I play like a professional. These Giants have to do that. Because you can recover from 2-4 early in the season. You had the team to do it. You showed that you can take down top teams in the NFL early in the season. But you have to be able to play like that regardless of your record, regardless of what happened the week before, regardless of what happened in your house and with your personal problems. And I just think that the Giants just haven't got the full potential from this roster that I think is one of the best rosters we've seen from the New York Giants since we've been working together, for sure, Lance.
Well, listen, we've seen fair share of ups and downs, and I think this is one of the first seasons in a while where the team has been consistently competitive.
Yeah.
Whether or not they finished, again, is a different story, but they've been in just about every game. Can't say that about previous seasons.
Yeah.
A lot of games that just got out of control early on, and you knew, regardless of what happens in the second half, they do not have a legitimate chance to get back into the thick of things. One player, interestingly, you piqued my interest in terms of you sharing your experience and your tie into Spags, which is another example of how a small world the NFL is. But there's an example this year of a guy they brought back, Isaiah Hodgins.
Oh, man.
Right? Hodgins was on the Steelers practice squad, but he had ties, right, to members of the organization and Kafka, so they had a need, right, to bring in a wide receiver, and because of the impression he made. Now, Hodgins played a lot, of course, the first time he was there and helped them in that playoff run in 2002, but now all of a sudden he could go from the practice squad to a regular roster and immediately contribute, and he also has familiarity with the scheme. I mean, that was a golden opportunity. I'm sure if you ask Isaiah Hodgins, what would you rather do? Would you rather be with a team that has a chance to get to the playoffs and be on the practice squad, or actually play and prove your worth to get back on a 53-man roster? I mean, I can't speak for him, but I think it's stating the obvious, right?
Unless it's like week 17 or something
Correct.
like that.
Yeah. And he's been in this area, so, uprooting himself, and I think he understands being with a few different teams. That's life in the NFL, as you can attest to.
But I was talking about him. Like, not specifically, but like, I feel like he embodied what I was just talking about, right? Like, he's a guy that has been on practice squads and taken off practice squads. The 2 times the Giants got him was off of somebody else's practice squad. Yeah. And he came in ready both times. And you got to have that mentality, because you never know. You got to have that Jameis Winston mentality, right? Jameis says, they said, what they say? They said, how was it when you were waiting? He was like, I wasn't waiting, I was preparing. I love everything
he's got
he
a
says,
line for everything.
I love everything he says.
He's extremely entertaining.
He's
There's
so
no doubt
good.
about it. Yeah.
But the mentality he has as a backup, he's a backup. He was third string.
Yeah.
Never wavered in his mentality. And he was ready. He came in and he played good football, right? He gave us the Jameis Winston experience, right? He threw some amazing passes, and some passes was like, oh, wait, Jameis, what you doing? Right.
And but that's Winston. Yeah.
That's Jameis Winston. He is consistent in who he is as a player. You know why? Because he's consistent in who he is as a man. When you're that way off the field, it's so easy to do it on the field, because you do everything how you do everything, right?
Doesn't put on a facade or something like that.
That's just how he is, and I just feel like sometimes, on teams, some guys might do that. They might act differently or do things differently, and it's like, no, bro, you're a professional. If you're doing anything differently, you're doing it differently here, but to a higher level, because you're a pro. Right, just like you're a professional in anything, right? If you go to a doctor and the doctor is not on time, or the doctor, messes up, or like, you can be like, bro, what? Like, you're a professional. Act like a professional. And I'm not talking about Abdul Carter. I'm talking about the whole team, right? Javon Holland hitting the ball out somebody's hands. Like, bro, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, those type of things, the little things like that, they add up. They add up, especially when it comes to close games in the fourth quarter. It's all the little details that matter. This team has to grow up a little bit more. I think they have some great leaders. I think there's some guys right now on this team that might not want to be here, or might not want to play for this regime. I don't know what it is exactly, but the Giants, I just felt like, man, we've seen them grow the roster to the point where it's like they are competitive with the better teams in the NFL. But there's other things that outlie that. The new head coach that comes in, that's got to be his number one priority. Getting all of the other stuff, the X stuff, the stuff that you don't really talk about when you talk about a locker room, when you talk about a roster, when you talk about putting a great team together, those little things that you don't speak about, those are the things that he has to master when he comes to the Giants.
Because that could also have a cumulative effect, to your point, on the entire team, not necessarily a few individuals. All right, we're going to open up the phone lines as we move forward here. Lance Medow, Jonathan Casillas with you here, Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants. 201-939-4513 is the telephone number. We go to Rob in Connecticut with us here on BBKL. What's happening, Rob?
Lance, JC, how's it going?
Doing well. What's on your mind?
Well, 2 things, actually. Thanks for taking my call. Number one, as far as the head coaching search, do you think it's safe to say that the Mike Kafka era is going to be behind us, and we're going to maybe get anybody besides Arthur Smith, and who do you think that'll be? And then I have another question after that one.
Well, why don't you ask the second question, and then we can tackle everything. at once.
Okay, yeah, that works for me. All right, well, you guys know best. Do you think we'll use any draft capital toward, and I have to say it, a kicker?
All right, Rob.
Good
Appreciate
question,
the
Rob.
phone call.
I was
Yep.
literally talking about that 2 days ago. I was like, Giants should draft a kicker. I mean, it's just been so inconsistent at that position for such a long time. You know, you had Graham Gano, who I love Graham Gano. Like, first off, he's my draft class. So, you know, like, shout out to all of the 2009 draft class, even the undrafted guys like myself. So I love him, but he's been very inconsistent, you know, especially when the injuries started piling up in the last
Well, the
few
injuries,
years.
I think, is the biggest concern of all.
Yeah,
Can't stay healthy.
And
Yeah.
then what we saw last week, why not? You know, like the points are so important. I mean, it's everything. That's everything in all sports. Points. That's everything in all sports. So if you can get a guy late in the draft that you know is going to be the kicker for the next 15 years for New York Giants because he's that good. I don't know college, you know, level kickers. So, but I was literally talking about that the other day, and I was like, why not draft a kicker late in the draft to secure that spot? Because it's been, when you look at the season's end of the last, I don't even know how long it's been since we looked and been like, did we have a good kicking season? More times it's been no than yes. So I don't mind it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any risk in them using draft capital. I mean, certainly I wouldn't move up tremendously to grab a kicker.
I don't think move up at all,
yeah.
actually.
I mean, you want to use a late round pick, a
Late,
sixth
yeah,
or a
for sure.
seventh, that's fine. The other option is, and I haven't looked at free agency because I'm still very much invested in the season. I don't want to rush my life, but there could be a veteran kicker, JC, on the free agent market that they could very well entertain. You brought up Younghoe Koo, and in fairness to him, there was a snap issue in terms of it not being handled by Gillen as to why he all of a sudden held up. But the bottom line is, your point is well taken. It has been an area and a facet of this team that you don't go in every single week saying everything's going to go smooth
and that's
it's
not
a
good,
guarantee,
Lance.
and that's not
that's
good.
that's really
well, listen,
bad.
you know this from
Yeah,
being a
that's
special
really
teams
bad.
player. Because, first of all, I mean, you mentioned the seasons we've worked together. There was one year, and this may have actually, this was one of the years you were with the Giants. How many games did you wind up losing because of a game-winning field goal?
Yeah,
Not
for
to
sure.
pour salt
for
in your
sure.
wounds, right?
Yeah.
Right? The
61 yards,
Patriots
I believe.
game, right? Here at MetLife
Patriots,
Stadium.
yep.
So, you know, once again, no personal issues. I'm not trying to rub it in.
Games are close, man. All points
Yeah.
matter, bro.
Without a doubt. So, yeah, the question about the kicker is a valid one, and if they want to address it either through free agency or the draft, I think that's warranted. As far as the evaluation of Mike Kafka for the permanent role as the head coach, well, I mean, Joe Shane had his press conference right before the bye week and made it clear that they will continue to evaluate him and that he will get a shot at an interview. And if you remember, Spags, you brought him up. Spags got an interview too when he was an interim coach. It's normal that they're going to give the interim. First of all, even if you don't hire the coach, I would say I'd want to hear what he saw firsthand, right? Behind closed doors. I know that the coach and the GM are talking regularly.
Nobody knows more than him right now.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
So there's value in having a conversation with Kafka to see what worked, what didn't, what he would tweak. And also, he's been here with the team for several years. So his lens, I think, is important to get that perspective from throughout the course of that interview. But just like we're talking about the players, the next 4 games and how they go up against, remember, teams that mathematically are not juggernauts, have issues, is going to also tell an awful lot about his realistic shot and what type of a statement. As far as candidates, it's wide open at this point. I mean, they can look at anybody, but remember, you know, based on the playoff schedule too, that's going to impact when and who they could talk to because of some of the tweaks and rules they made. Anyone who's a free agent, the Giants are going to be free to speak to once the season ends, but anyone who is currently on a coaching staff, there's going to be some challenges because they're going to be involved in their own playoff run. So you have to keep that in mind as well.
And the Giants are an appealing job. You know, this is an appealing job here. This is, you know, you have a quarterback for the future, you know. You got a talented stable of running backs, you know, a young guy that is a folklore hero, right, in Cam Scatterbull. You got a number 1 receiver. You got a top-tier left tackle and a solid O-line. This line has, I think, progressed this year. One of the bright spots that's been very consistent on offense.
Sure. Now, Illuminor is going to be a free agent, just for context purposes. But still, if you can keep those two guys together, definitely
GVR
attractive.
too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then on defense, right, you got so many different pieces. I do think we need a corner. I think that's something that need, but forget all of the details and stuff like that. But I just think that coaches would want to come to New York.
Sure. Well, and also the market too.
Yeah,
I mean,
the New York market.
don't get any bigger than
the
this.
History.
Yeah.
This is a great organization. Why is it a great organization? Not because what they've been putting out on the field the last couple of years, because of the history, right? And then from the top all the way down, this is run by great people, right? Everybody in this building is a great person. Like, I come in here all the time and I speak to everyone. This is a grade A organization. I've been around. I'm not going to talk about the other organizations, but I know the difference, right? And this is a grade A organization. So I don't think we're the only ones that know that, though. I think these coaches understand that, and then they look at it like, hey, man, this roster is not that bad either. They got a quarterback for the future that we got cheap for the next few years, right? You got a left tackle. You got pieces that makes this job a real appealing job. So I just hope that the process is done correctly. You pick the right coach, and we don't pick another coach for like 20 years.
Well, listen, the good teams, the consistent ones, I don't need to tell you this, preach stability. Everybody, not to get off topic, but I laugh. There's been a lot of articles written about Mike Tomlin and whether or not the Steelers should move on. It's cyclical every year. Yet what does he do? He keeps the team in the fold. They won a big game against Baltimore the other day. Yep. They're now in position to win a division title.
Again.
So, I mean, what would you rather have, JC? Would you rather be in it every single year, have a legitimate shot, or, every 5 or 6 years maybe be competitive? I don't know. Let me get back to you on that front. It's laughable to me.
With 5 coaches since, Coughlin, it was 5. It's 5 total, if I'm not mistaken, given the new one coming up, right?
You're talking about since Coughlin came in?
Was it Coughlin,
yeah, because, it's 7 if you include the 2 interims.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Yeah, right. I didn't even think about the interims.
Yeah.
But what is that?
Yeah, whereas I thought you were bringing up, in comparison, Mike Tomlin, you need one hand to talk about the last 40, 50 years for the Steelers.
Right, decades,
their GMs and their head coaches.
Yeah.
That's what the point I thought you were making.
Sure.
Yeah.
No. I was just talking about what's been here, what's happened since the Giants. And
it's been a revolving door.
Yeah, and John, he's trying to do, John Mara, he's trying to do the best for the team. Like, people's like, oh, what's John doing? I hear everything, just like you too, Lance, right? We hear everything that they're saying. And I'm like, he's trying to do the best. And the thing is, he doesn't call plays. He doesn't pick the roster, right? He picks those guys based on his decisions and all of that.
Yep.
And they failed, that's just what it is. And I say that from the record. Right, the Giants have one of the worst records, if not the worst record, since 2022 for sure, and maybe since 2017.
Yeah, you could go back certainly in terms of the volume. I don't know the exact cutoff of the year, but
it's
think about
bottom 3 for sure,
well,
100%, that's bad,
without a doubt. I mean, look, take away 16 and 22. You don't have any playoff appearances.
Right.
I mean, we know that. And, even in 22, and I think the diehard Giants fans will acknowledge that there are so many games, and granted, you talked about how you walk that fine line just about every game, but we could be talking about plenty of those games that could have went the opposite way.
We're not going to do that,
20.
man.
No, I'm not.
Give them their playoff win.
Well, I can't listen.
No
matter how powerful you may think I am, I have no influence in terms of going back in the past. I don't have Marvel heroics to do that and go back in my time machine. But in all seriousness, the point is, though, because you were going back to the Patriots, we were talking earlier in the show, there's a brand of football, a dominance. It's been quite some time since we can say that being synonymous with the Giants, where every week you go in and teams are a little bit concerned about what they're going up against.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that as a former player, every week you look at who you're playing and you go in and there's a different feel.
Yeah.
It's not to say you're taking anyone for granted, but because of how they play and the coaching staff and what they've instilled in their players. You play New England one week, and then you play the Dolphins the next week, if we use the AFC East as an example. I think there's a different approach, right?
For sure.
In terms of whether or not you got to put your pads on extra time.
Yeah, and then you could even look at a team like Houston, who record doesn't really show how good they really are, right? They've won the last few weeks, but they didn't start out good. But you watch them on TV the last couple times, they're like the best team in the league. Their defense definitely
without
is,
a doubt. And who does that come from? D'Amico Ryans, a former player and a linebacker.
And they form something down there, right? It's not just one player getting all the sacks, right? It's not just one player on offense dominating the game. No, it's a collective effort. And I think Will Anderson shows up every single game as well,
tad.
right? Just a little bit. But it's a culture that they've built. And culture is only a sustained thing. It's not a one-year thing, right? The Giants were really good a couple years ago, went to the playoffs and beat a decent Minnesota team. And since then, like you can't build on nothing that doesn't exist. You know, like there's culture in Pittsburgh because Tomlin's been there for so long. You understand what you're getting yourself into. Now, can it run its course? Yes, that can happen too. But there hasn't been anything established here since Coughlin. And that was a long time ago, Lance.
Well, and also it's hard to establish what you're talking about when you're only in the job for 2 years.
Maybe
and then,
if you get 2 years.
Yeah, and then another guy comes in and replaces you, right? I mean, Shermer, Judge, even before that, McAdoo.
And
we could go through the laundry list.
Do they even have time? You know, because like Dayball got time, and let's not get it twisted. Dayball got time because he won his first year. Yep. And he got 4 years because the other guys before that, the max they were getting was 2. McAdoo got fired in the second year, midway through the year.
Yeah,
he didn't get 2. You know, so it's like,
and he took the team to the playoffs in 16.
Yes, he did.
Whereas Dable took him in 22, and 23 went the opposite way. And listen, everybody's not guaranteed the same pathway. I think that's well documented.
Yeah.
We know that.
Yep.
But I mean, it just goes back to it's very hard to accomplish what you're calling for. If there's not patience being preached,
has to be patience, yeah.
Then you could really throw that out the window. I mean, we could talk about these nice things, continuity, stability. Yeah. It's so nice. We could pet each other and, rainbows and lollipops. But yeah, there you go. We'll hold hands too while we do the remainder of the show. But in all seriousness, the reality is you're not going to scratch the surface of any of that if it's a revolving door every 2 years, new coach, new GM, whatever it may be. So you can't even approach those terms and those words until you can say, we're going to give this guy the power to run things and we're going to stick with him. And that has not been a luxury that the Giants have been able to subscribe to. Let's head back to the phone lines. We've got Jason in New Haven with us here on BBKL. What's happening, Jason?
Hey, Lance and Jonathan, how you guys doing today?
Doing well. What's on your mind?
Good, man. Just 2 points. You two had already kind of stole my thunder what I want to talk about, but just for the sake of the conversation. You guys were talking about, the whole Jackson Dart getting out of bounds, protecting yourself as a quarterback. And I honestly agree with you guys on that. Jonathan, I always have respect for those who made it to the top of the top level in any profession or any sport, just any profession, right? So whatever your input is, and Lance, you've covered the league for years. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. I only made it to college ball, but I will say this that I like about Dart. While he has taken some lessons, especially the Ellis hit last week or 2 weeks ago, what I like about him, to me, along with Scatterboo, those two, in my opinion, how I see it from afar, those two, to me, are culture setters. And that's the reason I'll say this is for some reason, and I'm not in the building like you two are every day, but for some reason, this losing kind of attitude I feel is kind of I don't want to say taking a hold. I don't want to sound too out the loop, but I think those two are trying to change the culture, right? And while Dart is a quarterback and this isn't Ole Miss and SEC, I like the mentality that he's showing. Now, as he gets older, our hope is that he's becoming more smarter in the way he's taking hits, sliding, getting out of bounds quicker. Of course, that doesn't need to be said. But I like the mentality that he has. We don't have enough of those guys, in my opinion, Jonathan, like you stated earlier. We don't have enough of the Scatterboos, enough of the Darts. And I like that they're coming in with this kind of like I wasn't here for the last few years. I'm going to change the culture. I'm getting the first down. I'm getting the touchdown. So I like that about Dart. Now, he has to be smarter, like you guys said, but I like that. Second point, the coaching thing, right? I don't know a lot of these guys' backgrounds and resumes. I'm sure they're all qualified to be in the positions they're in. But what I would like to see, and I'm not saying you guys have to agree or disagree, but just for conversation, we haven't had this from Coughlin, right? And what I mean is a lot of people are so concerned, well, we need a head coach to maximize Dart. We need a coach to maximize the offense. We need a coach to maximize the defense. What I want to see a leader, right? in my opinion, when you're a head coach, your main objective is to build the culture and to show accountability and excellence on the field. That, to me, that's a job as a head coach, as a part of the X and O's of offense and defense. So you know why the Patriots were foaming at the mouth? Because Vrabel was that person when he played for the Patriots. You know why Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are always in the playoffs every year? Because he requires excellence. Now, they might not win the chip every year, but to be in a playoff every year and win a division every year, that to me is requiring your team to play with excellence. And that's what I want to see as a new head coach. I don't care if they're an offensive guru or they're great with quarterbacks or they're defensive gurus. I want to see a leader of men. So I thank you guys for taking my call, and I'll listen off the air.
Yeah, and I think a lot of interesting talking points, Jason. Appreciate the phone call that I want to piggyback off of. Number one, with respect to you don't necessarily need to bring in a play caller, I wholeheartedly agree with him. Actually, let's stick with New England, JC. Vrabel, what was one of his best hires? Josh McDaniels.
Yeah.
And he gave Drake May to Josh McDaniels and said, you guys go off to your own corner. I'm not saying that Vrabel has no say, right? And we know McDaniels has a great track record with quarterbacks, and May looks like a completely different quarterback, right? We're talking about a guy that's leading the NFL in passing yards and completion percentage during that last Giants game. So you can have a good delegator of responsibility who knows how to command a room, command a team, and empowers coordinators and doesn't have to be bottled up in the play calling. Now, in fairness, Andy Reid has done both very well. So I don't want to say that there's one shoe that fits all. Yeah. And also, I think I brought this up on previous shows, but if we go back to the comment from the last caller, Jason, the Giants also have plenty of examples across the board. Pat Shurmur, offensive background, right? And then you look at Ben McAdoo, offensive background. Brian Dable, offensive background. Now, Joe Judge was more of
special teams.
He was a special teams, but he was more of that guy that you would say you bring him in and he delegates, right? Because he's not a play caller. And we know how that turned out. So the point is, you could say they've tried different things. It hasn't necessarily led to great results. So if they want to go down any of the roads, they wouldn't necessarily be wrong for doing that. Coughlin was a delegator. He was a commander of the room, and he empowered his coordinators like the Kevin Gilbrides of the world, like the Spagses of the world, and it worked. It was a good fit. To each their own, as I say. Yeah. Once again, it doesn't have to be that type of philosophy, but the idea that you've got to go with a defensive coordinator because the Giants' defense isn't good, or you got to go with an offensive coordinator because they have a young quarterback, I completely disagree with those sentiments.
Me too. I actually agree verbatim what Jason said, and I want a leader of men because I've seen with this last 10 years since I've been retired, 8 years since I've been retired. I'm not that old.
Who's counting? But
but the last 8, 9. Well, I guess 10 years. Let's go 10 years because Coughlin was here in 15, and that was my first year with the Giants. So the last 10 years of the Giants.
You're commemorating your anniversary with the start of the team. I see. Okay, that's it. How sweet. Yes. Please go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. Yeah.
But it's. I just think that there are certain coaches that are built to be head coaches, right? And there are certain coaches that will never be a good head coach because they don't fit what a head coach needs to be, and I'm not saying Spags can't be a great head coach, but clearly he's a better defensive coordinator than he is a head coach.
Sure.
Right? And I think that might be the case for Daboll. It might be the case for several coaches that the Giants had. But who's to say that John Mara, Joe Shane is wrong for giving a guy an opportunity because he shows promise, right? But I truly believe what Jason said. You need a leader of men, somebody that can get in here, like you said, get the coaches involved and have them be their lieutenants, right? And then you have to get the leaders of the locker room be your chiefs, right? If you look at what the Patriots did, right? The guy, of course, on offense was Tom Brady, of course, right? But the guy on defense was Vince Wilfork when I got there, right? It was Gerard Mayo, right? It was Dante Hightower. It was Devin McCourty. Like, they held the standard, right? And that was coming from Bill. So a guy that comes in to be the leader of this organization has to be a 5-star general, somebody who I believe is a delegator. You don't have to be that smart, Lance. You don't have to be that savvy as an offensive guy. You don't have to be mean, but you have to be a leader, and you have to have every single person in that locker room following you without questioning one bit. The guy yesterday for the Chargers, the one that made the interception at the end of the game, Jefferson, I believe his name
Tony
is?
Jefferson,
Tony Jefferson,
former Raven. Yep.
You know what he said about his quarterback? He said, I'll fight, I'll die for him. That's what he said. I was like, yo, that's what's up. But, like, you want to have that as a team because guys are willing to put in extra effort. They're willing to put their life on the line, their body on the line. Let's be real about this. Like, football is a dangerous sport, so you are putting your life on the line for sure. But not even that serious, but it's just the culture that I've seen in different winning organizations. I just haven't seen it here for the New York, and I just don't think they had the right guy leading this team and leading this organization yet.
Glad you brought up the Chargers. Harbaugh is another great example. Delegator, right? He brings in Greg Roman. They have a history of working together, but Harbaugh's not the play caller. He's on the sideline taking command of everything, and he's got
and that team
Minter as his defensive coordinator, Roman. Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of strong models that come from the Coughlin school of thought.
Right.
So if the Giants wanted to go back in the direction, that's fine. But then you look at what Ben Johnson has done for the Bears, okay? Mm-hmm. Ben Johnson is an offensive-minded guru. He's the head coach, and he calls the plays. Yeah. Well, that's done wonders for Caleb Williams right in the Bears thus far. The results are good.
Sean McVay when he first got hired.
Without a doubt. Mm-hmm. So I could give you attractive examples on both sides of the equation, but we know that the Giants model that at least has worked. Now, Coughlin is maybe an unreachable standard given what he did for this organization. I'm not saying that it can't be duplicated, but I mean, you're going to like the highest point. But that worked because he knew what he was strong at, and he knew that he didn't want to be bottled down with play calling. But they can find whoever the coach is, whether if Kafka is given the promotion, we know Kafka is going to be the play caller. So there's not really mystery there. But if they go in a different direction, what do you do to the interview process, JC? You ask that coach. I mean, one of the biggest questions is, what do you think of Dart? What do you think you'd run with Dart at the controls? And would you be the play caller? Or would you bring somebody in? And if you're going to bring somebody in, who do you envision? I mean, those would be the pressing questions that I would have if I'm interviewing a candidate, because not to say that Dart is going to be the only indicator of the trajectory of this team, but he's certainly a very key component of what you want to do here moving forward.
Yeah, and I don't want to – I mean, I'm a defensive guy, so let's not – I'm biased, of course. I can't even say I'm not biased. I'm very
Show
biased.
your true colors.
But you got to ask tough questions on defense too.
Well, who they'd bring in if they're an offensive-minded
guy.
guy.
Also players too. Who are you gonna? What are you gonna do with Dexter?
Sure,
that's
all relevant.
And that is just that. I think, and I do think. Look, I think. Look, Dayball got fired, right? I think he made a huge mistake in saying this out loud when he said that Jackson Dart is the leader of this football team after one of those games. And I just put my hand on my head. I was like, bro, like, he's not. And he hasn't been. I mean, he is a leader. He will be eventually. But there's guys here that's been here before you, Dayball, that's been the leader of this team. You know what I mean? And, like, I just feel like that showed me he truly didn't understand the locker room dynamic of a football team, right? And when you bring in a guy in here, they have to fully understand the locker room dynamic. Because you can't not get the most out of your locker room. That is the number one thing, not your quarterback. It's the entirety of your roster. Can I get the most out of my roster? Can I get practice squad guys going hard at practice? And that is the culture that is built. There's no culture from a guy that never was a head coach. There's just no culture there, right? And the Giants, they've only done that once in the last 10 years. Shermer was the only guy with previous head coach experience, if I'm not mistaken.
Of the recent group of guys, correct. Yes, Shermer was the only one with recent history. Yeah, because Dable was not a previous head coach either.
Right. So, for me, we got to give a little time. We got to give a little grace, just like you would with a rookie, right? Rookie GM, rookie head coach. They're going to make mistakes, right? So coming in, I don't expect whoever comes in to be perfect, and the Giants are all of a sudden, 12-5 and they're making the playoffs, got the 2 seed or whatever. Like, I'm not expecting that, but I do want to see progress in the culture of the organization, right? Not the wins and losses. I mean, it's going to be not too hard to win more than they did this season. Every game is difficult, of course, like that. But I mean, 2 wins this late in the season is crazy. But that's what I want to see first. I want to see, can you get every guy in that locker room? Can you get your stars playing like stars? Can you get your young guys not making silly, unprofessional mistakes, right? Can you get your roster to do that? Now let's see what you look like on the football field, because you have to take care of that first.
Real quickly, before we get back to the calls, you were bringing up a point talking about you can't just focus on one facet. Interestingly, the NFC East is being showcased on Hard Knocks, and one of the cutaways showed Kafka. Yeah, I did. I saw the first, only one episode.
There's only
You're
one.
not that
Okay,
behind.
okay,
Yeah,
good.
don't worry. We'll give you time to catch
Thank
up,
you,
and then
thank
I'll
you,
truly
thank you.
test you maybe in about a week or two. But they showed a little bit of the Giants, and they showed when Charlie Bullens, the new defensive coordinator, addressed the unit for the first time, who was sitting in the room, Mike Kafka, which is why I think there is an attractiveness about a guy not being bottled up into just play calling, so this way he can be attentive, right, to the other elements of the team. And I think Kafka deserves credit. I think he's done a really nice job since he's took over as interim coach to make sure that he's available to the other areas of the team. Not to say Dable wasn't doing that, but it's very evident that he's going out of his way to do that. And I think that is maybe something that is a lost art that gets overlooked.
And this is good for him. Before you go on to the call, this is good for him too, because he had previous head coaching interviews as well. This is good experience for him. Let's say the Giants don't keep him on staff at all. You know, he could be a viable option for a team. He could definitely be an offensive coordinator. We've already seen that.
Yeah.
You know, but I think he's a viable option, and he has some on-job experience now behind him. Because, again, it's hard to bring in a guy and say culture because he doesn't have anything. He's 0-0 as a head coach. You know, like, how good is he going to be as an NFL player? He's never played an NFL game, and I'm talking about a player. Same thing with coaches. You don't know.
Of course. There's no proof in the pudding.
Right.
To use that statement. Yeah, without a doubt. Let's head back to the lines. We've got Lawrence in Florida with us on BBKL. What's happening, Lawrence?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure. What's on your mind?
I just want to say I want the Giants to get some tough guys on that team. I mean, these guys, they tackle high. They'll tackle him for a 3-yard gain. By the time they bring him down, he gained 8 yards. None of the Giants would have hit the Patriot quarterback like that guy hit Dart out of bounds. And I never, ever saw a paint come off a helmet before. I mean, you got to get some tough guys in there flattening some people and being intimidated, more physical than these Giant guys are. They just barely push the guy out of bounds. They kind of tackle their arms, tackle high. There's 5 guys try to bring one guy down. The guy scrambles for another 20 yards. That's all I want to say. I want some tough guys.
I'm with you, bro.
Like the Burns and.
I'm with you.
And that's all I got to say. I'll take your answer off air.
All right, Lawrence. Yep, appreciate the phone call. Well, I mean, that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, JC. I mean, I think you made that very clear, that the caliber of the players in the locker room, their mindset rolls over to clearly the field. So, I mean, that question/statement is in line with what at least we've been addressing throughout the remainder of the program. Let's head back to the lines. We got Len in Columbia, Maryland with us. What's happening, Len?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
You're right.
Len. What's going on?
All right. A couple of quick questions, one for each of you. Lance, on the Hard Knocks episode last week, the first time they showed the Giants, it was a coach with 2 or 3 players trying to find the Atlantic Ocean. I thought that was somewhat telling and not a very good optic. And Jonathan, on the leader of men thing, don't you think they had found a leader of men in their last 4 coaching hires?
No.
This is nothing new. They're always looking for leaders of men.
Oh, okay.
I got a suggestion, John. If we're going to look for a leader of men, let's look for somebody who's got some accomplishments that we can look at it and say, wow, that's a leader of men. Like they've been to the playoffs, they've got a Super Bowl ring, they've been coaching in the NFL, they got NFC experience, they know what it's like to go into those stadiums and win games.
Mike McCarthy.
The leader of men, John, if you're going to sit there and make a judgment about a 38-year-old guy, boy, you're going to have a tougher time than if you look at somebody who's got some pelts, John. who's got some accomplishments that he can write down on a resume that indicate that he's a leader of men. Let's forget with these young coordinators. Got to get somebody with head coaching experience who has some stuff on the resume, John. Look, I didn't think we were going to get much out of this season, and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed for two reasons. One, that I'm right. We're not getting much out of the season. And two, I thought we'd be further along. I just thought we'd be further along. So let me talk about something and kind of get your opinion on it here. Right now, today, this organization is sideways. There is so much uncertainty. I don't know how these guys know from day to day who's coaching them. I mean, we fired a coach a week for the last 3 weeks. I mean, from the corporate suite all the way down into the locker room, there is so much uncertainty. I don't know how these guys concentrate. I'm hoping we can, our key players, the 8 to 10 guys that are going to carry us forward, Lance, Jonathan, the 8 to 10 guys can stay healthy. Because 2 of those 8 to 10 guys are already hurt.
Yeah, Scattaboo and Neighbors.
I mean, come on. I mean, there's not a lot. Now, we're not going to fire 70. Probably we're holding contracts on about 75 people today, okay? Now, some of them are really short-term if you're on the practice squad, but technically they're under contract with us. We're not going to fire 65 guys. So some of the people that are on this roster are coming back, but man, I just don't know until we can start settling things down how these guys are going to be able to concentrate and try to win a football game. And I think these next 4 are somewhat important. I mean, we got 2 division rivals at home. That's a step forward. If we can take one of those 2 or take them both, it will give us a win over all of our division rivals at home. That to me is an important step. And John, I know you agree with me on this, and Lance probably does too. Man, you got to win those home games. You can't keep getting your best customers going down those escalators in a bad mood.
Well, they also desperately,
before you know it, you've lost your best customers.
Len, they also desperately need to win on the road. They haven't won on the road since early last season. So, that's been just as problematic. I understand from a business perspective where you're coming from. No disagreement there. But, I mean, wherever you're playing, I think at this point, there's that urgency to finish and put together wins. And listen, we're up against the clock here, so we'll let you go on that note, Len. I do want to react to a few of the things he threw out before we wrap up the show. The first thing being, for those that may have not caught the Hard Knocks episode, he was referencing Tim Kelly, who's the new offensive coordinator, was joking with, I don't want to spoil it for you, okay? But right at the beginning, clip has been all over online. He was with Jackson Dart and Theo Johnson, and they were trying to determine which direction the ocean is in terms of what's creating the winds in the Meadowlands. I mean, Dart, as he acknowledged, Dart's from Utah. I mean, as a native New Yorker, I wouldn't blame a kid from Utah to not necessarily understand the geography of New York City.
He didn't know where the Atlantic Ocean was?
He was unsure of where the bodies of water were. But I looked at it. It was all good and fun. And I think Tim Kelly was having some fun at Dart's expense. I mean, to read into that and say that it's a reflection of what's going on the football field, Len, I think we're taking it a little too far. I get it. You want to look for ingredients here or there. That, to me, was just a comedic element that goes on in the practice field, JC, which I'm sure you've taken part in, seen things as you needle each other. I really don't think that has any impact whatsoever of what's going on the football field.
I'm interested in watching this, though.
Well, see, I'm giving you now
more of a
reason.
The last time the Giants were on HBO, it was kind of not that great.
Well, that was more geared, in fairness, towards the off season. This is actually in season.
Yeah, and we've had some problems in season this year.
Well,
Lance.
I mean, I don't think we need to have another show to explain that. But what I'm saying is, it's a different approach in terms of what the show is focusing on.
I want to watch it for sure.
So I just wanted to at least provide the context, especially if some of our viewers and listeners. As far as the point about going after somebody with previous head coaching experience, well, we talked about Shermer did have previous head coaching experience. I'm not saying he's got the resume of, let's say, a Mike McCarthy per se. So there's nothing wrong to flip the script and say, all right, we're only going to consider individuals. But I mean, Brian Dable did not have coaching experience, but he's coached in the NFL for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So, eventually, it's like anything else in life. You got to give a guy a chance, right? How do you get head coaching experience if you're never given the chance? So that's how a lot of teams are thinking. But if they wanted to go the direction and say, we're only going to consider veteran head coaches who have winning resumes,
your pool drastically gets
without
smaller.
a doubt.
Yeah.
And that you took the words right out of my mouth.
And how do
I'll
you
let you continue
produce
from there.
a head coach if you don't go offensive defensive coordinator?
Yeah.
Well, this my thing, and I think we could probably end on this. Hopefully, Lance, over time. I just think and I look at it as I feel like my characteristics and who I am as a player on the field, I was a lot better at weak side linebacker than middle linebacker. And I'm saying that because it's literally the next step over. It's 2 yards, not a yard and a half. But it's just a different way that I play the game and how my makeup is as a player. And I think coaches are like that too. They have a different makeup of them that makes them great coordinators. And then there's different makeup of guys that can be a good coordinator, great coordinator, but he still has the tools to be a head coach. I just think that sometimes we don't look at those tools, that they're intangibles like you do of a quarterback, right? Or is he smart, right? Does he have a good family at home? Those things matter.
Yeah.
When it comes to how good a player is, I think that we got to start looking at more of the intangibles and not so much the resume of a coach, especially when you're talking about offensive, defensive coordinators. Because if you're up for a head coaching job, you've probably been doing a good job at your job. But that doesn't mean that this new job you're going to be good at.
No, I think that is all very fair and valid points. I guess the response would be sometimes, though, it's hard to evaluate the intangibles until you put the guy in that position. For example,
100%.
Joe Judge, right? Belichick gave a high recommendation, I'm sure, to the Giants. Yeah. And you figured, all right, he's a special teams coach. He can understand what it means to balance various different facets. But you don't know until all of a sudden, you throw him into the deep end of the pool and you take away the swimmies. And you see whether or not he could paddle or he could actually, look like he's an Olympic swimmer. So it's hard. There's no easy answer. But as far as the point about if you just are very selective in proven head coaches, you're going to have 1 or 2 legitimate candidates. And I think in order to do a very detailed interview process, you got to open yourself up to at least have the dialogue with people that may not fit the bill, just for a learning experience and to get their perspective on what they think of the team. All right. That is going to wrap things up for us here on Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants, broadcasting from the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. JC, this was a pleasure, man. Hope that we don't have to wait as long
to see you.
Yes, correct.
You see how happy I was when I saw you
can
when
tell.
I walked in?
And there's no acting at all involved in that, even though the high-pitched voice came up.
But it's been a long time. I mean, we did 2022 together, basically.
Sure.
And then we did a little bit 2023, and then it's been
It has been. I don't know why they're trying to keep us apart, but, maybe
love you,
this
bro.
is a
I
unison.
love for you, bro.
Without a doubt. My heart is bigger. I can't even show it with respect to that. All right, this love fest is coming to an end here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest. We'll be back up and running on Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. For Jonathan Casillas, I'm Lance Medow. So long here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Have a good one.